Welcome to this week's weekly wisdom webinar series. Thank you so much for joining. Firstly, let's please be in deep acknowledgement for our traditional landowners of this land and of every land throughout our wonderful earth, their contribution, their wisdom, and of course, their innate knowledge. So, we are speaking to the seventh tenet of the authentic self model today. We are speaking to the wonder of intention and attention. Now, here's the interesting thing about intention and attention. We begin to understand intention and attention from a place of deep connectivity. So I'm just playing around with some of the screens here, just making it there we go. Okay, I hope that's okay. So we begin to understand intention and attention from a place of deep connectivity. Now, why is it an intricate part of the authentic self model? That's a very important question to answer, of course, and it's an intricate part of the authentic self model because without setting a deliberate intention for life, we lose our path, we lose our direction. So it becomes, therefore, very important to understand the power of intention. Now, today's webinar is going to speak largely and greatly to intention. We're definitely going to make reference to attention, and the attention that we pay in life, again, assists us in clarifying our direction. And the attention that we pay to certain areas of life, especially areas that we value, allows us to move through life in such a way that allows us to absorb more of the detail of life because we're paying very careful and sincere attention to what we value most, to what is most important to us. Of course, that which is most important to us and is in alignment with our greatest vision for self and our greatest purpose. So from that perspective, let me caveat that by saying our grandest dreams and aspirations and so forth. And from that perspective, we can immediately grasp the importance of intention and attention. So why are these properties of intention and attention a tenet of the authentic self model, and how are they essential in cultivating a practice of authenticity and congruency throughout life? Well, the main reason why intention and attention is part of the authentic self model is because Two main reasons. One, it enhances our lives. And I'll go ahead, of course, and throughout this webinar, I would hope that you'd be able to grasp the reason and the reasons as to why it enhances our lives. And secondly, when we are very clear on an intention that we set for ourselves or an intention that we set for a particular experience or set of circumstances, and when we pay very careful attention, we're able to set an intention and we're able to pay careful attention because we know what we're paying attention to and we know what we're setting an intention for. Therefore, by default, we're assuming a very congruent and authentic, real, transparent posture of self. Because we're very clear, the assumption is made, if we're able to set a very deliberate intention and we're able to pay, or we know what we're about to pay attention to in our lives, we're making an assumption that we're very clear on life. We're very clear on what's important to us, or we're clear enough. And when we come from that place of clarity, we're coming from an authentic place because we're also, there's probably three main reasons. The third is that we're living our truth. To set an intention indicates that there is something that we are in pursuit of, an experience or an outcome or an experiential state is the best way to put it, or an emotional or psycho-emotional or spiritual response. And from that place, we become, again, clearer on where we are going and what exactly it is we want from life. So this is the importance of the authentic self, of living that authentic self. And of course, the authentic self model and the authentic self tenet is part of the sovereign leadership model, as is the sovereign leadership model part of the authentic self model. So we move to a deeper place of understanding self. Because when we're authentic and when we apply the entire spectrum or the 14 tenets of the authentic self model, and we practice these tenets and we're aware of these tenets and we familiarize ourselves with these tenets, what generally happens is we create a space for ourselves to be empowered, to experience an empowered state of being. And it's from there that we realize that all these tenets, they connect and they linked up. We're through 7 at the moment of the authentic self model, and they all connect and linked up. They link up and they provide us with a deeper understanding of self, a deeper connection to self. They provide us with direction and clarity with respect to who we wish to be and how we wish to move through life. And of course, with that understanding comes a greater clarity in self-governance or sovereign leadership of self. We become quite proficient in governing self. We become quite proficient in understanding self. So intention is a starting point of every dream. It is actually the creative power that fulfills all of our needs, whether it's for money, relationships, spiritual or conscious awakening, or even love. In fact, it is the creative pivot point that empowers every area of life. And if you remember the 9 areas of life, in fact, let me go ahead and bring the 9 areas of life up. It will probably be of great service to us because we're making reference to it. One moment, please. We have that up. As you can see, the 9 areas of life. So here with the 9 areas of life, we begin to understand that it is so important to be very, very clear on who we are and where we're going and how we choose to move through life. And importantly, when we go back to, apologies, there we go. When we go back to understanding self and we go back to that intention is that creative power for fulfilling every aspect of life and feeding every aspect of life, we begin to see the deep connection that takes place with respect to the 9 areas of life. Yeah. Very good. Okay, so that's the importance of understanding the creative power that intention wields, because it truly does. Now, everything that happens in the universe, in our reality, in our existence, begins with an intention. When we decide to speak to someone, when we move our arms, we call a friend, we exercise, we eat food, we have a drink, we take any action, it begins with an intention or a seed thought. So we want to understand that thoughts, motivations are synonymous with intention. Thoughts and motivation are an intrinsic part of understanding intention, are an intrinsic part of calibrating and articulating our intention with precision. The sages of India observed thousands of years ago that our destiny is ultimately shaped by our deepest intentions and our deepest desires. The classic Vedic text known as the Upanishads declares that you are what your deepest desire is. You become what your deepest desire is. As your desire is, so is your intention. As your intention is, so is your will. As your will is, so is your deed. As your deed is, so is your destiny. And that becomes a very, very powerful translative understanding of the way we create or live out our lives. You can begin to see the power of intention. And again, intention is translated or understood through thought form and through feeling as well. But it's then because we're such deeply verbal beings, and we rely on language so immensely in our society to understand the world around us and understand ourselves in relation to the world, that we begin to connect that intention to language. Our intention is translated through language, and that becomes language. Therefore, becomes the crux and the leverage point for us moving in a very particular way and living a very particular life. So the clearer we can get on our intention, the more likely we are to align our actions of present with that desired state or that desired experience that we are seeking. But the term intention can actually be quite vague and convoluted. Is it a belief? Is it a prayer? Is it having faith? What is it exactly? In simple, so I want to define intention because it's very clear for us. When we understand, generally speaking, when we understand, everybody has different learning styles, but when we understand a particular concept or a thematic concept or a philosophy or an ideological disposition or a particular practice, we can declare whether we resonate deeply with it, and if we do, we can move towards it, and we are more invested in understanding it or learning more from it or growing from it or expanding our mind and consciousness from it. But if we don't quite understand it, we can distance ourselves from it. So it's important to understand what an intention actually is. And of course there's many different understandings of intention, and we're going to go through all of those today. Well, not all of those, so we're going to go through two main knowledge points with respect to intention. So in simple form, our intentions are our thoughts directed towards a desired outcome. And to be more complex than that, it's the realization that our consciousness has the ability to create our reality. So our awareness of self, our innate ability to, well, fortunately or unfortunately, it's not innate for all of us for various reasons. If we have cognitive dysfunction, or if we are not connected soundly through body and mind, we can struggle to connect to our awareness of self and our awareness of ourselves being aware of a reality that is perceived to be external to ourselves without getting too complex. But effectively, it's the realization that our consciousness has the ability to create our reality. We become then very powerful manifesting beings once we embrace this notion. Also, an intention can be understood as a directed impulse of consciousness that contains the seed form of that which we aim to create. Again, saying very much a similar, making a similar statement, but in quite in a different language that may resonate with you or may not, and that's okay, but begin to understand the creative power of intention, okay? And what it is, it's a creative tool for manifesting the life that we want. And you can replace the word manifesting with designing the life that we want, designing the life that aligns with our highest values and our purpose, our vision, our dreams, and what we think is right, what we think is suitable for us, a life that we should and could live. And like real seeds, intentions can't grow if we hold on to them. We must express them. Expression is an expression to another being, solely to another being. Expression is expressing these intentions to ourselves, making them very clear, whether it be through verbal language, through the written word, through a feeling state, but it must be understood. Our intentions must be understood at a bare minimum by ourselves. Only when we release our intentions, in other words, when we have enough trust and stability in ourselves to release these intentions into the fertile depths of our consciousness, can they grow and flourish. And that becomes a very, very important point to understand because, again, it speaks to the creative prowess and the creative power of who we are. Now, can intention influence our physical reality? And I and many other authors or other minds or other experts in particular fields of psychosocial sciences or in the fields of consciousness or personal growth and development, quantum physicists would say, yes, they would agree that our intentions or our thought forms or our ability to create a desired state of being within ourselves and then physically take action in the world of the material and realize physically that intention or that thought or that desire? The answer is yes, we can do that. Again, it's another example of how powerful intention can be. And when we pay careful attention to ourselves and to that intention and to the entire set of circumstances that we create for ourselves, we begin to recognize the deep efficiencies that take place within the parameters of our intention. Especially if our intention is meaningful and it serves a grander purpose than just ourselves, we can begin to connect powerfully and immensely to that intention through careful attention to every conceivable variable to ensure that we are able to see through and physically manifest, physically create that intention, especially if it has deep meaning for us. But of course, we can't speak to intention without making a reference to consciousness to some degree. And we must understand that consciousness is an arbitrary term. It's something that Eastern mystics and ancient mystics and ancient philosophy and ideology and wisdom has been attempting to answer for millennia upon millennia. Science is attempting to look deeply into what consciousness is and still hasn't quite grasped the notion of consciousness. And we are all on a collective journey towards understanding what is consciousness and what gives us life. And we believe it's the seed of consciousness, but what is it exactly? And how does it affect our being? And how does it create the life or the lives that we live? Now, without going on a tangent and deviating from intention and attention and moving too deep into the realm of consciousness, I just want to make mention that consciousness allows us to experience. Consciousness allows us to be very aware of who we are. Consciousness allows us to understand the world. Now, our human bodies and our brains and every component and part and aspect of our brains definitely contribute to consciousness being realized or consciousness having an ability to express itself. I am of the belief, based on the material that I've read and the adept individuals in this area that I've spoken to, that the brain isn't the producer of consciousness, but rather is a receiver of consciousness, as is the body. And of course, the brain is housed by the body, so the brain can't function without the body, and the body can't function without the brain. But consciousness is independent in terms of its reality of the human body. And I'll allow you to research that yourself and go into that. And we will speak to consciousness in future webinars, and we'll unpack and debunk consciousness as best we can in the time that we have. But for now, just understand that it is a slippery subject in the realm of physics and consciousness studies and Eastern mysticism and Western psychology. Physicists don't want to really look at it. Psychology doesn't really want to look at it. Mathematics doesn't really want to look at it. Science doesn't really want to look at it. It's a challenging topic. But understand that intention and thoughts and thought patterning and the emotional self and the way we experience reality is intimately linked to consciousness. So although our attention may be a force in the world unlike any we've ever imagined possible, it may not be the actual mechanism by which we influence physical matter. So now we said there earlier, can intention influence our physical reality? And I'm of the belief, yes, it can. But let's look at what Dr. I think he's a professor or a doctor, we'll call it Harry Macy. He's executive producer of the documentary The Living Matrix. So check that out if you haven't seen The Living Matrix, The New Science of Healing. And he's co-founder of NES Health. Now he states the following. He states that intention seems to be a linking process. It's not an extracting process. So for example, if you intend to connect with a person who is at a distance, to send them a healing frequency, for example, you can understand he comes from a background of healing and health science and so forth. The intention is the connection point. So something more is actually going on that is allowing information transfer to take place. Intention seems to get you to the point where information can be accessed and transferred, but intention itself does not fully explain the mechanism for the transfer. So it becomes obvious then that this transfer that takes place, and intention plays obviously a key part in this, but is there more to be learned about intention and its relationship to information transfer? And I would agree with that. I would say yes. But in terms of intention being an integral part of creating and experiencing our physical reality, I would say it's an absolute necessity because it's directive. It directs us towards a particular type of experience. You can't move through life without wanting to. You can't jump in your car unless you have an intention of going to the shop or visiting a friend or simply just jumping in your car. So we must take that into consideration. Whatever the relationship between intention and information transfer, most neotic and even some frontier physics theories agrees that human consciousness may be the most fundamental aspect of the universe. That is something that so many different disciplines can actually agree upon. And consciousness may be the deep down force that molds the universe moment by moment, experience by experience. And that's what I was referring to earlier with respect to consciousness being independent of the physical self. So when we look at evidence, we understand that evidence thus far has revealed that consciousness extends outside of the body. So it's unlikely to be only an emergent property of our brains. And that's, again, what I mentioned earlier. We're exploring this a little bit deeper now. But it can influence not only the state of our minds and the quality of our lives, but also our health at the most gross level. And it's amazing to think that what we actually think about others and the energy we are projecting towards them, well, we can actually project that energy for good, for ill, for any particular outcome. And it may actually affect that person in ways that we could conceive, because we did, but in tremendous ways or in minute ways. And he's curious as well, because our beliefs are very intimately linked. Our beliefs are very intimately connected with our behaviors. Yeah, and it's interesting that our beliefs also appear to play an integral role in how effectively we can use our focused intention in specific directed ways. And what's interesting here with respect to that is our beliefs shape our thought patterns and our behaviors, and our beliefs shape what we are attracted to and what we repel against, and what experience we wish to have, which of course are directly correlated with intention. But it appears as well that entanglement is at the heart of the matter, which suggests that to some degree or another, as we think, so goes the world. And we can speak to entanglement being the interconnected nature of things and the interconnected nature of reality to surmise very basically. And non-local entanglement is a part of that. So you can look at quantum physics for your own research with respect to that. But the webinar today is not the webinar to look deeply into quantum physics. So we begin to understand the power of beliefs, the power of intention, the power of thought dynamics, the power of our minds, and the power of consciousness, the ability to understand ourselves in a very deep and meaningful manner. Now, further, when we're speaking to attention, we're speaking to the attention that we place in life determines, like I have a saying that the quality of the questions we ask ourselves in life determine not only the quality of the outcomes that we experience, but also the quality of our experiences and the quality of the lives that we live. Now, attention, the quality of attention we pay to what we value most in life and what is most important to us, what our purpose is, determines the quality of the life that we live. And when we couple that with a very sincere, meaningful, and well-aligned intention, we have a very powerful combination for creation, a very powerful combination for manifestation, a very powerful combination for actually being of service to others and assisting in evolving their path whilst we're also evolving and expanding our own path. that there interests me tremendously, because all of a sudden we've got this innate ability to be this magnificent version of self that, well, guess what? What it actually does is move through the world in a very authentic way, because we combine intention and attention, and we're being true to ourselves, we're being true to our desires, we're being true to what we truly want, and we live that. We actually live that fully. We embrace it. Now, how amazing is that? Let that sit with you for a moment. How important intention is to living an authentic life, especially when that intention is very clear. Now, how do we develop an intention? Well, we firstly must know ourselves. We must understand what we value most in life, what our hierarchy of values are, what our grandest purpose for self is. These are two integral, critical starting points. Now, whenever I work with anyone, or whenever I take workshops, retreats, and so forth, adventure retreats, I'm very, very specific with determining our values, gaining clarity in our values, and gaining clarity on our purpose as a foundation. From there, we begin to learn when to ask quality questions of self and what quality questions actually look like. And again, they're in alignment though with our values, what's most important to us, and our purpose for self, our grandest vision for self. So that's a starting point for cultivating a sincere, well-aligned intention. And then obviously when we understand ourselves in that capacity, we are able to pay attention to very specific aspects and notions of life, because we're paying attention to what we value. We're not wasting our valuable time in areas that don't really concern us, that may be interesting to other peer groups or externalized social norms or familial structures, but not our own. So it's important to understand our values and our purpose. Very important to understand that. So let's now speak to multiple steps that we can take that will set a very powerful intention for self. There are a number of actions or postures we can assume, or spaces we can create for ourselves that allow us to live a very full life, that allow us to live a life of intention, a life of deep awareness and meaningful, inspired action. Because intention has the power to do that, especially when the intention is clear. So let's go through these. There's probably about 15 or so. 15 ways to create meaningful intention. So we create a space for ourselves to immerse ourselves in that gap. Now, most of the time, our mind is caught up in thoughts, emotions, and memories. Now, beyond this noisy internal dialogue is a state of pure awareness, pure consciousness, that is sometimes referred to as the gap. Now, one of the most effective tools we have for entering the gap is meditation. Now, it's not only meditation. We can enter the gap through physical exercise and movement. We can enter the gap through conversation, well-aligned, inspired conversation. But meditation takes us beyond the ego mind into the silence and stillness of pure consciousness. This is the ideal state in which to plant our seeds of intention, because we're very deeply connected. Now, we can get through this space as well with plant medicines. Now, I'm not suggesting that you take plant medicines, especially unsupervised. You should be very experienced if you're moving in that space, but plant medicines have the capacity to do that. Now, silence and stillness is an integral tenet of the sovereign leadership model, which of course is a part of the authentic self model. So learning to create silence and stillness for ourselves allows us to discover our truth, allows us to connect to our truth and connect to the most authentic version of self. And that becomes very, very empowering for us. It's in stillness where we discover our power and we discover our truth. It really does. Next, release our intentions and desires. Once we've established a state of restful awareness, simply release intentions and desires. Create them. Take action upon them. And the best time to plan our intentions is during a period or after a period of meditation, or when we're in a particular wavelength of sleeping, when we're in and out of that consciousness is very important. Because while our awareness remains centered in the self and centered in the quiet field of all possibilities, that's when we must take action in setting our intentions. And after we set our intentions, simply let it go. Don't think about it. Probably if I ask you not to think of a pink elephant, you're going to think of a pink elephant. But just let it go. Set your intention. Know what action you need to take to align yourself pragmatically with that intention, and simply go for it. And continue this process for a few minutes after your meditation period daily, or during even. Even spend a few minutes every evening. Remember, meditation is it's not about being thoughtless. Meditation is about creating stillness and silence and observation. Meditation is simply observation. Next, remain centered and remain balanced in a state of restful awareness. Intention is much more powerful when it comes from a place of contentment than if it arises from a sense of a lack of need. In other words, intention is more powerful if it comes from inspiration, not desperation. Remain centered and refuse to be influenced by other people's doubts or criticisms. Block what does not serve you out. Now, that doesn't mean ignore, well, it does actually mean ignore the naysayers, but it doesn't mean if someone provides you with sincere, constructive advice or guidance, take it on board, but allow it to resonate with you. And if it doesn't, move it on. Let it go. Your higher self knows everything is all right and will be all right, even without knowing the timing of the details of what will happen. So there has to be an element of trust and faith in self once you gain that clarity in who you are and who you wish to be. Which leads us on to surrendering and detaching from the outcome. Relinquish any rigid attachment to a specific result and live in the wisdom of uncertainty. There's a lot of power in that. In fact, spontaneity is a human need, one of the key human needs. So embrace that, because attachment is based on fear and insecurity. And while attachment is based on the unquestioning belief in the power of your true self, if you remain in attachment, you can't move in detachment. And attachment is constricting. Detachment is liberating and open. Intend for everything to work out as it should, because that's your intention. Then let go and allow opportunities and openings to come your way by recognizing what those openings are, because you have clarity in what is aligned with the highest version of self. Trust, of course, in the interconnectedness of life. How important it is to trust in the interconnectedness of life. Your focused intentions set the infinite organizing power of the universe in motion. Trust that infinite organizing power to orchestrate the complete fulfillment of your desires. And what you're really doing here in this space is creating a belief system that resonates with the interconnectedness and the unification of all consciousness, in other words, all awareness and all living beings. That's what we're doing here. That's the belief system we're laying down. Remember, our belief systems influence our behaviors and the way we move through the world. Don't necessarily listen to that destructive inner critic, that inner voice that says you have to be in charge. The obsessive vigilance, that obsessive vigilance is the only way to get anything done, to achieve, to be, to live your intentions. The outcomes or the outcome that you try so hard to force may not be as good for you as the one that comes very organically and naturally for you. See, you have released your intentions into the fertile ground of pure potentiality, and they will bloom when the season is right. And that's a belief system that allows it to take place. But in the same instant, you're not simply just sitting back on the couch and waiting for masterful, grand things or experiences to be bestowed upon you. Not at all. You're living fully and you're taking action in that fullness. Releasing limiting beliefs, so important. First, we must identify our beliefs, all of our beliefs, or as many as possible, and then really deeply identify our limiting beliefs. Now, in my programs, in my online programs, in my workshops, in my one-on-one training, we move very deeply in the space of beliefs and limiting beliefs and what that actually looks like for us and how we can move through that space and then identify those sticking points and move past them. And there's techniques and skills and tools that we use and an abundance of exercise that we use to make that happen. So we've seen how powerful the mind is. We don't want to put a limit on the extent that it can change our reality. Believe big. See the world for its abundance rather than its limitations and its restrictions and its fear. And observe your personal potential as limitless as opposed to limited. And that's a very, very important distinction, because if we come from a limited space, we'll function within that box or that encapsulated circle, whatever it may be, whatever analogy you want to give to it. But if we come from a limitless space, then we are able to experience infinite potentiality. And that's very important. Now, next, we want to be clear and malleable in our intention. Seneca, famous philosopher, Roman philosopher, said, if one does not know to which port they sail, no wind is favourable. Get clear on your purpose. But be clear and specific with the intentions you set. When do you want it to happen? By when? Where will it take place? Who will you be with? But as you move ahead with this, be flexible with the journey and how you get there. A detour may be a hidden blessing and steer us in the right direction. It's not about creating such rigid clarity for ourselves that if something does not adhere to that vision for self, that we lose our motivation, our inspiration, our attention to the detail, but rather just know where you're going. And, I mentioned there, who will you be with? Where will you be? When will it happen by? That works for some people, but it doesn't work for everybody. So be malleable as you need to in setting your goals, please. Next, engage in full sensory recruitment. This is very, very powerful for the creative visualization process that often accompanies intention setting and attention setting. Psychologists and therapists highlight the importance of VAC, visuals, audio, and kinesthetic modalities in shaping our mind. So when visualizing our intention, use these modalities to make it as real in your mind as it will be in reality. Turn up the volume on the people you're with, the color of the suit or dress you're rocking, your bodily sensations and emotions as you celebrate life. And as you're having these clear intentions for self and as you're having these visions for self, get into as much sensory detail as possible. Thousands of studies have been done in these areas with elite athletes, with very powerful musicians, with high-flying corporate executives. I don't really like that term. I don't know why I mentioned high-flying, but with people that are high performers. It's sensational what it has the capacity to do. VAC or visual audio kinesthetic creative visualization. Learning to take meaningful action is what we've been talking about throughout this whole webinar. It's so important. Like a horse and carriage, visualization needs to connect with hard work. Eat the elephant one bite at a time, but eat the elephant. Reverse engineer and break your goals down to pieces if you need to. Then don't hesitate or let fear hold you back from doing the most immediate action or actions towards your goal. It's so important. Do something daily that will bring you close to your goal. So just take action. Trust in the outcome, take action. Move towards specifics, but if you need to, be malleable and flexible in understanding the way your goal relates to you and to your life, yeah? Now, here's the attention piece. Here's another attentive piece, should I say. And it's recognizing and being in honor of and celebrating the synchronicity. See, there'll be times when things are too coincidental to be mere coincidence. I personally don't believe in coincidence because I believe in one of my belief systems is the interconnectivity of life and the way we influence each other non-locally and locally. Things and life and experiences will generally fall into place and the intention becomes very tangible when we start to notice the synchronicity. Celebrate these affirmations because they're telling us that we're on the right track. That it's in a recognition and what we pay attention to, what we focus on grows. Yeah, where attention goes, energy flows. So use these as markers to go back to when you're feeling down, when you're feeling disconnected, when you're feeling depressed, and keep moving forward with an eye open for the next synchronistic event, because that becomes very empowering for us. So when intention meets reality, boom, that's synchronicity. Yeah, and when I speak to reality, I'm talking about physical manifestation of reality, because in here, and just in here, it's still a reality. It's just a different reality. It's not transferred into the physical per se, into the physical external in our environment. Create a very powerful support circle for self. This is so important. So this is what I call a circle of wisdom. And do this with a close inner circle of friends or peers. Ask them to also set intentions for you if you feel comfortable doing so. Now, I'm in two minds about this. And I thought about this because this can work very well for some, but there's also a capacity to want to hold our intentions close to ourselves until they begin to really physically manifest. So it's going to be very dependent on your peer group. And I would hope that your peer group is very connected, is very in alignment with you and who you are and how you move through the world. And beyond that is very understanding of what your intentions are. So if one consciousness can alter a reality effectively, imagine what a community or combined consciousness can do. No doubt it will help us move mountains. So from that perspective, it can be very powerful, but you have to align your intention with people, individuals, groups that are aligned with your vision as well. And then you align with theirs, so there's an equal value out there. That's very important to understand as well. Physical movement. Just like a muscle, exercise your intention. Write it out daily. Be detailed with your dream and set yourself targets and deadlines if that resonates with you, if you're that type of person, if you become inspired to take deeper action by doing so. Create a vision board if you need to. Whatever it is you need to do to solidify your intentions, to get clarity on it, to take action on it. Make your intentions so ingrained that you're beyond confident, that you take action, that your actions become autopilot towards manifesting it. So whatever you need to do to make that happen, make it happen. And finally here, link your intentions to your values and your purpose to enhance its power and authenticity. Second last point. Forgot there's another one. So if you get clear on your values and your purpose, which is something I teach and promote so deeply and so much in the work that I do and the programs that I have, if you align your intention with your purpose and your values, it will enhance its power and its authenticity. And it will enhance your ability to remain focused and attentive to your intention because you're deeply inspired. You're not drudging through motivation and challenging yourself day in, day out to be more motivated. You are naturally inspired. Now that's cool. And finally, explore and evaluate the many areas of your life that need an upgrade. Don't be afraid to explore the chasms of your being, to explore your mind state, to identify with an area of life or an action piece or constant, consistent, regular experiences that you're having that actually don't align with who you are, or the fact that you may want to alter a mindset. All goals should encompass more than one aspect of life to ensure personal growth reaches its full potential. It's as simple as that because we are multifaceted beings. So in this case, consider deeply how you can improve your relationships, your career, your vocation, your social life, your spirituality, your health, and your community, using your core values to guide you. So you have to get clear on your core values and think about your goals and the goals you wish to set for each of these areas of life. And there's nothing wrong with having multiple goals or having multiple purposes. Don't drown your attentive practice, though, with so many goals that it becomes overwhelming. A rule of thumb is there are 9 areas of life. In 1 year, you would set 1 to 3 major goals for that area. To be very clear and honest, I would set 1 major goal for each area. And then a number of sub-goals. Again, limit this number as little as possible, 3 to 5, maybe even less. around each area of life. Now, to recap on the areas of life, we have the 4 human bodies. We have the physical, the spiritual, the emotional, and psychological. Then we have the other remaining 5 areas of life: social, family, relationships, vocation, financial. Now, in these areas, you have one major goal for the year, or one major goal for that epoch or part of your life, which could be months or the next 5 years. That's okay as well. And you have a number of sub-goals. Again, 1 to 5 sub-goals. It wouldn't be much more than that. You need to simplify. Simplifying it is so important. And this is just one technique. Again, in one of my extensive lessons in Mastery of Self and in Chaos to Clarity, which are both online programs, and they are also 3-day and 3-day, 7-day, and 3-day, 7-day, 12-day by memory retreats, and very detailed workshops. I go through in great detail the power of goal setting and some of the techniques that we utilize in goal setting, in manifestation, in the creation process. So we begin to connect more and more to that. And we connect to it with a great deal more depth as well. So people, that's us wrapping up now. That's us understanding to at least some capacity, and I hope to a deep capacity. That's us understanding the importance of intention and attention, and moving through that space in life, and understanding the importance of setting an intention, and the importance of being very attentive to the self and to our surroundings and our circumstances and our lives, and the intentions that we set for ourselves. It becomes so important for us and for those around us to deeply and truly and masterfully connect to who we are and where we're moving and where we're going in life, and where we're moving in life. I want to say thank you so much for watching. I deeply appreciate your thoughts, your observations. If you have any questions beyond this webinar, please feel free to contact me privately. I have no problem in being able to share my experiences with you, if that will be of service, of course. And of course, if you have your own message to speak in life, speak that with absolute zest and zeal and tenacity and focus and brilliance, because the world needs authentic human beings. The world needs your truth. They don't need a diluted, obscure version of you, or a version of you that is influenced by so many externalized pressures and cultural norms and values that you don't own and you don't resonate with. The world needs you as an authentic human being, living purely in truth. So if you have a message to share, whatever that may be, speak from the heart, speak sincerely, speak openly. I wish you many, many, many blessings on your journey. Remain brilliant. I look forward to seeing you next week for Tenet 8 of the Authentic Self model. And we shall discuss, I can't remember what Tenet 8 is. Let's go through it. Let me go through it. Let me share the screen with you as well. Why not? Let's look at, I've forgotten which one it is. A great one. It is, one moment please. It is courageous action. We are looking at courageous action next week. There we go. Courageous action. So, thank you so much again for watching, for participating, for being present. I wish you many blessings on your journey. Be well, be brilliant. I'll see you soon. Thank you so much.